Thanks, Dan. This afternoon, I'm going to be talking exclusively about a different topic than this morning, and only about what best motivates individual families and households to prepare at home. That's it. If you want to talk about anything else, it'll have to wait until the Q&A section. And it's a topic that I'll report on in a minute, but I want to share with you that it's extremely important a topic for the community I live in. Those of us who live in the big Palm Springs Valley know we'll soon have a catastrophic earthquake that'll isolate us from the outside for at least 7 to 10 days. That means no one from the county seat will be able to reach us. Nobody from Phoenix will be able to reach us. Our first responder communities will be so overwhelmed, the normal resident will feel as if we don't have fire and police and EMS, and we're on our own. So my town has taken on with a vengeance doing things so that the residents get ready to go through the worst earthquake in the lives of anyone alive in California alone, which goes back to household and resident preparedness. And this talk is titled Increasing Public Preparedness. Once again, I have to say, somebody else gave us a lot of money to do this research and take no responsibility for the words that come out of my mouth. And that was the Department of Homeland Security. And once again, I didn't do all of this work alone. I had colleagues from UCLA, the World Health Organization, myself, and another university in California. And the purpose of the talk is to give you, literally, new scientific findings about how public information reaches, teaches, and motivates the public to prepare for disaster. And at the end, I'm going to provide practical, evidence-based ideas about how to motivate public preparedness. And answer the question, this is the fundamental question, how do you help people stop doing what they're doing, listen to what you have to say and recommend, learn from you, and get ready for disasters that most people think won't really happen, and if they do, will happen to someone else, not them. So that's what you're up against. You're trying to get those people who have this in their head to get ready for something they don't think is ever going to happen, and give it priority over cooking the evening meal, deciding what clothes to buy the kids for school this year, and doing other things that human beings do on a typical day. Now, why are people that way? Most people don't perceive risk to high consequence, low probability events. They perceive personal safety from nature's fury and disaster types, and they're right most of the time. I want to give you two basic definitions that we worked up to clarify things for our research. What's preparedness? Public preparedness means different things to different people. And a clear definition is important because it frames the public actions that we want to influence. Public preparedness is a whole lot more than 72 hours worth of water, flashlights, batteries, canned food, and duct tape. It's not just that. And we developed a typology of public preparedness actions. First is learn how to be prepared. Learn what to do before, during, and after an event to stay safe and more. Another category of preparedness activities, you're thinking about the general public, is having the household plan what to do and having a household disaster plan, including items like how are you going to get in touch with loved ones who aren't home when impact occurs? How are you going to rebuild your life? Another is training and practicing, learning first aid, learning CPR. In California, CERT training is very popular. Organizing supplies and equipment, which is what most people think of when they think of household preparedness. Certainly that's stockpiling enough water and other things that you'll need and more. Particularly like me, I have 140 gallons of water stockpiled from my earthquake disaster, because that's how much we'll need. Another is securing building contents if you live in a place where the ground shakes. Oh, that would include Kansas if you ever have the New Madrid earthquake happen again. And that's attaching heavy furniture to the walls and other non-structural mitigation items that need to be done at home, so that 95% of the deaths and injuries in California occur because of the knickknacks and furniture people have in their house and that they haven't secured them in earthquakes. Very few of our houses collapse. But another one is protecting your building structure, evaluating the safety of your home and other structural mitigations. In Kansas, for tornadoes, tornado safe room, it would be among them here. And another is one of the biggest things to try to prepare is to have it be that if there is a disaster, you don't go broke. And for some people, that's buying insurance and having cash on hand in the house. The typology looks like that, beginning with learning how to prepare, planning what to do. And the cost of these things increases as you go up. Now, what's preparedness information? Because I saw a table filled with preparedness information out front, including ready.gov and Red Cross, etc. For a social scientist, this means cataloging the independent variable. That is, the things people are trying to manipulate to bring about a change in the dependent variable, which is motivating household preparedness. So different preparedness information include things like brochures, internet sites, television and radio spots, school coloring books, grocery bag messages, museum displays, refrigerator magnets, school, workplace, and neighborhood activities. And things like these are typically delivered to the people of our country in different ways. One-shot annual events, the once a year let's get ready day, versus long-lived campaigns, different information from different organizations. And I'm sure you know better than most, there are many different organizations distributing household preparedness information, a coordinated campaign across different organizations, and more. It's very diverse. And if you want to study the impact of these activities on what people are doing and not doing, it's somewhat complicated as a social scientist to get your measures wrapped around all this. So what's the historical research base in this area on the factors that motivate people to take action to prepare? There's over 50 years of communication research in the social science research record on this topic. For different disaster types. It includes, as we talked about this morning, warnings, but also includes the impact of public education information on household preparedness. Many different publications are in print. If you are interested, you can access that research record. There's a 350-page annotated bibliography with all the findings that the researchers found, and 1 page per entry. So there's over 350 documents to look at, and 1 study per page. And you go on the Natural Hazards Center website and just muck around, ask a few questions, and this will pop up, and you have access to the entire research base. You can print it out, put it in a loose leaf notebook, and look very intellectual. The bibliography contents include the full reference to the piece of research, the author, the title, the publication outlet, a summary paragraph that describes what was studied and the research methods used, and conclusions made by the researcher about what they think they found about how A might correlate with B. A being some information activity, B being the dependent variable of increasing household preparedness. Before you do that, if you do it, and probably few of you will, I want to say it's not all good research. Some of it stinks, some of it is hardly relevant, and some of it is fantastic. And that's the way it is in the scientific research community. Some were based on probability samples, going into a place as complex as, for example, Los Angeles, and interviewing people that represent a statistical representative of all households there, and quizzing them about their preparedness activities, and then asking them factors about what information they got about household preparedness, and seeing if the two correlate in one way or another. Some are very sophisticated statistical models. Others are just one person hanging out on a street corner for one morning, chatting with three people that happen to walk by. Good research, by the way, I also want to mention, distinguishes between what people think versus what people do. Now, don't get upset with me. For those of you familiar with some polls by distinguished emergency preparedness organizations in America, if you did a survey, you might find yourself asking questions they recommend that say things like this. Ask your citizens, on a scale of 1 to 6, how prepared do you think you are? That's not a measure of preparedness, and it's actually a rubber ruler. Here's why. In California, a lot of the citizens there know there's about 40 different things to do to get ready for earthquakes. And if you ask them, how prepared do you think you are? Some person might say, oh, geez, I've only done 12 out of 40. I'm not prepared very much. Whereas if you go to another part of the country and ask people, how prepared do you think they are? And they say, oh, I'm really prepared, because they only know about 4 things to do, and they've done 3 of them. And so you have one person reporting high preparedness that has less preparedness than the person reporting low preparedness. A good way is, that's like going to see your doctor. The doctor walks in with a questionnaire and says, on a scale of 1 to 6, how much cancer do you think you have? What would you say to the doctor? What kind of doctor are you? You're supposed to tell me. And no practice recommendation should be made unless it's based on findings that are repetitive across multiple studies. Just because one study concludes something doesn't make it useful enough to be put into practice. The findings need to be replicated in different parts of the country for different hazards, and when you see repetitive findings accumulate, you could begin to develop some confidence. So I'm going to give you a summary of the findings from the historical research base if you read all of those 350 publications on this topic, because I actually have read them all. One thing you conclude is, gee, everybody's making different conclusions. Social scientists don't know what they're talking about. Lessons learned have been piecemeal. Some studies were done on small local populations, making finding synthesis possible, but clarity, consistency, and confidence could be much higher. We lacked clear evidence for what's most important and what's least important, not ready to be rolled out for the practitioner community. What that empirical research record has in it is 10 things correlate with households preparing. One of the category of things is the information they receive from the emergency management community. The number of sources, the number of channels, the frequency, telling them what to do, consistency. Another are factors related to information observed, observing others preparing and copying what they do. Another is statuses. Income, education, occupation, age, race, gender, ethnicity, and country of origin all correlate with household preparedness. Another is roles. Whether you have a partner or not, whether you have a family or not, whether you have children or not. Another is experience. We know in California, for example, that for 2 years after a major earthquake, people prepare like gangbusters and then stop at the end of that 2-year cycle, and it falls off like the end of a grading curve in a classroom. Another is information belief and the perceived credibility of the source. Another is knowledge about what to do and where to get more information. Another is perceived risk, the probability of occurrence, personalization. Does this help any practitioner? I think not, but this is what the empirical research record in the social sciences look like. Perceived action effectiveness, and that's the link between actions to prepare and cutting future losses. And then talking about it with other people, or milling behavior. So what was missing in the empirical research record was clear knowledge about what's most important and what isn't, and how factors relate to form the process whereby providing information to a member of the American public is converted into preparedness actions at home. In other words, what matters most and in what order. Those are all the factors people found to correlate with household preparedness. We don't know how they relate to each other, and we don't know which one should be an itty-bitty speck of a circle and which one should be the size of a monstrous balloon in terms of its influence on the behavior. But now we know. DHS funded the Manhattan Project on this topic. Like the federal government funded the Manhattan Project to invent the atomic bomb. And this was another of those wonderful, rare occasions when they said you can have all the money you want, nail this. We want the country prepared for terrorist attack. And if it makes a difference for other kinds of disasters, great. But we want to know. And so the researchers smiled, took all the money, and produced findings that are impeccable. The findings are clear, they're consistent, and they're replicated, which I'll say a little bit more about in a minute. And if any of you have any inclination or any training in social science, this is what I'm going to show you, and I'm going to show you the data, will blow you out of the water. There are applications ready. We have confident pathways for how you can actually increase people in their houses getting ready for disasters they think will never happen, and if they do happen, will happen to someone else and not them. So here's what the mega study did. First of all, the mega study did it on a statistically representative sample of everyone in the United States of America. Then on a subsample representative of everyone in New York City, because that's where 9/11 happened and DHS wanted it, on Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles, the two other high terrorist attack cities in the country, and then on a representative sample of whites, Hispanics, African Americans, Asian and Pacific Islanders, and the largest ethnic group in the country, people who consider their ethnicity other. It's the fastest growing group because people keep marrying each other. Here's what preparedness looks like in the nation. Develop emergency plans, stockpile supplies, purchase things to be safer, learn about terrorism, reduce plane travel because of terrorism, so on and so forth. We correlated all the factors that prior research showed would predict preparedness with household preparedness, reported household preparedness, not asking people on a scale of 1 to 10, how prepared do you think you are, but asking them about how many gallons of water do you have stored for an emergency, or do you have duct tape, that sort of stuff. And what the correlation showed was every single one of the conclusions half a century of research of researchers found, we found that gender correlates with household preparedness. We found that experience correlates. Dozens of factors correlate with it. We replicated mishmash. Most of the correlations were weak. Here's what the mega study did next. We modeled the social process. What we wanted to do was identify the key factors or processes that motivate the public to take preparedness actions. And the approach we used, we examined the effects of all factors ever found to correlate with public action taking. We used an analysis approach informed by theory, and we wanted to develop a short list of key factors and how they relate to form human process that results in the house next door family doing things to get ready. That's what the model looked like. Each of the boxes represents a dozen individual variables, demographics, experience, cues, information, etc. And here's the final model. Doesn't make sense to you. It doesn't have to. However, it sure makes sense to a quantitative social psychologist. So I want you to see that there's data. Then we estimated models. These are standardized regression coefficients estimating a model of simultaneous regression equations. So we could see the true effect of any one factor on all the rest of the factors while controlling for everything else. That went over most of your heads, but what that means is clean, good science. Because the conclusions we could reach hold while all other factors' influence is eliminated. The column on the right, which is called R square, is explained variance. Variable X7 down at the bottom, preparedness actions taking, R square is 0.38. Now, this is an important number. We explained 38% of the variance in household preparedness action taking in America. Now, if you're an engineer, you'd laugh at 38%. Engineers want to explain 99% of the variance in the factors they want to deal with. If you're a social scientist, 38% is as good as it gets. It's as good as it gets. This is really strong findings, even though to an engineer it wouldn't look too good. But to me it looks wonderful. There's the final model with only the statistically significant paths in it. Are you convinced yet that there's data behind my point of view and I'm not just giving you my opinion? I speak from the data, not my opinion. My opinion is a professional one based on the data. And we had breakthrough results. We had consistent results, which is very rare in the social and behavioral sciences. What do I mean by consistent results? When we just estimated the model for Hispanics, we had the same results as when we just estimated it for African Americans, and the same results as when we just estimated it on Asian and Pacific Islanders. Same for Anglos and same for the fastest growing ethnic and racial group in the country, other. And it also was true when we estimated the model in different areas. It was true on the statistically representative sample of New York City people, Los Angeles people, and Washington, D.C. people, and the nation as a whole. Social science doesn't produce data that you get the same findings from that many different populations. It's never happened before. So let me say it another way. We nailed it. Okay, plus, as I said, our findings, 38% explained variance, is strong in the social and behavioral sciences. It's high explained variance in all the models. Now, the key findings can be summarized in one slide. So this is where you need to get on the edge of your seat. What we found, the key findings, can be summarized in one slide. There is no book with, look at all these different things. One slide. This is the head of the nail. Want me to click? In descending order of importance, the thing that motivates Americans to prepare for disasters they think will never happen to them is cues. What do I mean by cues? Actions that peers have already taken. What? Stop. What do you mean by peers? their relatives, their neighbors. Actions that they can observe and hear from people they know, love, and trust. Oh, wait a minute, you mean it's not FEMA? No, it's not. You mean it's not Kansas state government? Mm-mm. You mean it's not the emergency management community? Nope. Not the Red Cross? I thought that was the most respected preparedness organization in America. It is, but they're not what motivates people to prepare the most. They got great stuff. And here's how it works. You go to dinner at a friend's house, and they show you their emergency supplies. Your wife or husband asks, why do you have that? In case there's a disaster. What have you got? Oh, well, we got this case of top ramen noodles. We have this electric generator. Here, look at it. Touch it. See how it wheels? And we have 10 5-gallon jugs of bottled water. There they are, lined up. Great. And then on the ride home in the station wagon, Henrietta says, Harry, you think we should buy some of that stuff? And then they do. Now, what's amazing about this is a century ago, anthropologists discovered that that's how innovation spread from one part of the Anasazi Indian village to another. It's copycat behavior. Who's the most credible spokesperson to motivate preparedness? People's friends and relatives. Interesting. Only in America, only for African Americans, only for whites, only for Hispanics, only for Pacific Islanders, only for New Yorkers, Washington, D.C. people, and people that live in L.A. Now, I'm going to speculate, even though we didn't do a special sample in Kansas, that you're probably like the rest of us Americans. And the most credible way to motivate is not for you to tell people to get ready, but for people who have already gotten ready to tell people to get ready. Now, you can take that in any direction you want, but it may suggest that a key audience to address aren't the people who aren't prepared, but the ones who are, to open up their mouth for with the people they live next door to. I love turning people inside out and upside down, and that should turn you upside down and inside out. However, you're not off the hook. That's just the best way, the most effective way to bring it into existence. So before I start talking about factor number one, let me tell you what we're doing in my town. Now, you have to remember, in my town, I live there. And remember, we have no emergency manager. We don't even have police and fire. They're all rented from the county. We don't have many. And we've got retired people on an emergency preparedness commission, and I'm one of them. So what we've done in my town is believe Dennis. And since we have our own TV station that hardly anybody watches, but nevertheless, we went around and I said, well, if that's what does the most good, why don't we get people's neighbors to show people on our TV station what they've done to prepare? And so we filmed one woman in a modular home who, proud that the city was coming in to film her in her living room. She was just busting with pride. She couldn't wait to do this. And we had the city guy that knows about filming come, like you have one, who's here filming me, and film her. And she talked about how she had all the bracing under her modular home bracketed to go through an earthquake without falling to the ground. And how comfortably safe she felt because she lived alone and didn't have a husband anymore that could help her if the earthquake comes. And then they filmed me. And as you might suspect, I'm a household preparedness nut. And I showed them my Yeti solar generator. And I showed them my case of top ramen. And I showed them my stash of canned goods. And I showed them my evacuation tent, because I know no one's going to want to stay in a building after this earthquake, including me. And I showed them my portable air conditioner for the tent. And I showed them my portable ice cube maker, makes ice in 6 minutes, running off the Yeti. And I showed them my favorite gin wrapped in bubble wrap. And I showed them that I had metal cocktail shakers. And I showed them that I had plastic martini glasses. So I said, we plan on being in our tent, in air conditioning, with the lights on, shaking the shaker. Preparedness is what's important to me and for me. I hope you don't think I'm going through that earthquake and living on my own for a week and not having a cocktail in the evening. Well, we haven't done a study and probably never will, but what I'm saying is, it's that kind of conversation that people copy. And so we're actually trying that out. It's a very innovative idea. It's based on really significant science. Doesn't let emergency managers off the hook. There's 2 more things here, and this is information about preparedness. And what we discovered was information that has a particular content works better than other kinds of information. The information that works best is information about what preparedness actions to take. It's kind of like this. How many of you have ever raised a little boy? Raise your hand so I know. Okay, how many of you have ever taught that little boy how to tie the laces on his shoes? Okay, good. I'm talking just to you, but the rest of you can listen. Except this might work for little girls too. And for those of you who have never had a little boy or a little girl, how many of you were ever a little boy or a little girl? Okay, so everybody's included. Okay, so how did you teach the little boy to put on his shoes? It probably went something like this. No. That's not how you put it on. Here, let Daddy show you. That shoe goes on the other foot. See? And then you tie the lace like this. Now you try the other one. You showed them what preparedness actions to take. So the list of actions is detailed. Then it explains how the actions cut losses. You probably didn't teach your kids this when you taught them how to put on shoes. But it's saying, if you live in the desert, in this part of California, you need at least 50 gallons of water just for drinking before help gets to you. Why? Because every road, every mode of transportation will be severed, and the troops aren't going to get in for 7 days. So the only water you're going to have to drink is the water you set aside. And you better set it aside so it doesn't break when the ground shakes. Well, can I drink the swimming pool water? No, lady, there isn't going to be any water in your pool. It's going to slosh out. Oh. And if you have enough water, you'll live. You have to make that connection. How the action cuts the losses. You need to strap that television screen to the wall so it doesn't fly across the room and hit your husband in the head. That's how people get injured in earthquakes. Oh, is that why I should use earthquake hooks when I hang my pictures? Yes. And if you use an earthquake hook, that'll be right there when the ground starts shaking. Oh, now I get it. And they have to be consistent messages. And so those of us that were part of this project demanded that FEMA and the National Red Cross hold a national level conference. And we took them on. And they sort of responded. We said, you look at your stuff. It's not consistent with everything in the country. It's got to be consistent. It's got to be the same message. You're telling people where we live in California, we need 72 hours of water? If we listen to you, we'd die. This needs to be at least adapted to the communities that it's being presented as. And you can't have organization A saying this and organization B saying that. The organizations need to deliver the same message. You're confusing everybody, minimizing household preparedness. Now, next thing is you can't just deliver it from one source. Not sufficient. People need to get it from multiple sources. So that means the state of Kansas, it means the county, it means the city, it means the NGOs. Everybody needs to be saying the same thing, and they need to deliver it multiple times over multiple channels. People aren't going to act because they got the information once. You need to sell it the way they sell Coca-Cola. Never ending. You'll never finish this job. And as soon as you do, new people will move in and you're back to zero. Okay, so these factors drive actions in two ways. Let me show you again, these are the three factors. If you want to know what buttons to push to drive up household preparedness amongst the people who live in your city or county, this works. You could keep doing other things, may not work quite as well. All right, they have indirect effects, information, and all three of those things is information. Just information from your aunt is still information, directly as well as indirectly. And the indirect effects go through knowledge, and that's knowing what actions to take. Perceived effectiveness, that's knowing how taking those actions cut losses. And milling, talking about and seeking more information on their own, and it looks like this. So information that's observed and heard and its content and delivery has a direct effect on action taking for household preparedness and an indirect effect by the stuff that's in between people's ears. Knowledge, perceived effectiveness, and milling. And these discoveries really do provide clear and consistent scientific evidence about how to upgrade household preparedness in the United States of America and can readily be put into practice because public information is pliable and can be shaped by policies and programs and practitioners. You have control over it. It's good news. So they turn practice upside down because traditionally we've communicated risk to the public and hoped that they'd infer action. And what we're saying is stop doing that. Our new evidence suggests that you need to communicate actions to the public and let people infer whatever kind of risk they want to infer. What I just said is, you don't need to tell people, hey, it's Kansas, we got tornadoes. Bad door to open. The door to open is, you need to get ready for disasters. Why? They happen in Kansas. Okay, other things don't matter much. Some other factors aren't statistically related to preparedness action taking. Other factors are, but either their effects aren't real and go away when other factors are controlled statistically, or their effects are so small they can be ignored. Here's some examples. Perceived risk has an indirect and weak effect on people taking preparedness actions. I'm sorry to tell you this. Fear doesn't sell preparedness. In fact, it does the opposite. If you scare people, they'll tune you out and drop out. And we've known that in the social and behavioral sciences since dentists started trying to get people to brush their teeth. They began by showing pictures of mouths with dead teeth. Freaked people out. Toothbrush behavior went down. Demographics have little predictive value in terms of motivating preparedness. Demographics like being poor, etc., can still impact action taking by influencing affordability or the specific pathways that you need to reach different segments of the human population. but the demographic factor itself has little impact on convincing people to prepare. Now, because I have hung out with the practitioner community my whole career, I'm pretty good at converting those statistical models, remember the lines and the numbers and all that, into plain language, and I've done that for this. And so now I'm going to speak plain language now that I've told you about the social science. Information is the key to motivating public household preparedness. It works everywhere for everyone in the United States. Mainstream Americans and minorities, across the country and in different cities. This is really good news. This is as good as it gets. You'll never get better information about how to crank this engine better than this. Some steps for practice are, and this is me telling you what to do, even though I know telling people what to do doesn't work. I make myself laugh sometimes. So, step one, use evidence-based approaches. All public education and information efforts are not equal. More could be accomplished if we redesign and distribute public information based on scientific research evidence versus intuition. Now, I have a bone to pick here. This is a major thing to say, because what it implies, and there may be some truth to this, is I'm not fond of something that's very popular in emergency management. And what that is something called best practices. Why am I not fond of that? What's a best practice? It's someone who doesn't use science. It's someone who goes out, oh, I came home from a conference and I found out that the state of Washington is doing something for earthquake preparedness called Map Your Neighborhood, which, by the way, is a wonderful thing. We're doing it even in my town. And then you replicate that. Well, who's to say it makes a difference or is any good? It's never been tested. So this is saying, use science. There are scientists that study this kind of human behavior. Versus intuition. Stop using your intuition. And this is a problem that plagues social scientists, whoever they are and wherever they go. They have all this scientific data. They believe it. They've been in touch with it. They've mucked around in it. They have colleagues and conferences about it, share data with each other, publish stuff, get dragged through the ringer on publishing an article, making it better. It gets published, and nobody believes them. So if you think emergency managers at the bottom of the totem pole, you're not. Social scientists are under you. So use evidence-based approaches, something based on data. And in emergency management, there's data now and science to support you. 2, stop doing things that don't work. Don't try to motivate the public with higher probabilities or fear. People need to be aware of hazards. Increased probability may be useful for other audiences, but it's not for average people living in their homes. Increasing perceived risk doesn't motivate public preparedness action taking. Doesn't. Scares people and turns them off. They stop listening to you and go back to, it's not going to happen to me. But we still have seismologists in California that keep coming out with new reports. Oh my God, the probability of a catastrophic earthquake in the state has gone up from 62% to 67%. Then they look out their office window and wonder why nobody's doing anything. Because it doesn't motivate people to do anything. 3, use multiple information sources. Provide information from as many sources as possible, regardless of who you are. You alone can provide very effective public information to increase household preparedness. You need partners to maximize effectiveness. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is the state of Kansas. I'm in Kansas, so I'm using you as an example. This county, the different cities in the county, and everybody that's providing information here need to partner with each other and get your act together. Coordinate a little bit. Say the same thing. Distribute it in an ongoing flow of information to the public. Every 3 weeks something goes out. You can't do it alone. And that means coordinating with current information, what current information providers are already doing. Now, this sends chills up and down the spine of most people because it means in order to do this effectively, you need to get out of your office and hang out with your comrades. You can't do it alone. 4, standardize the message. Okay, now wrap your mind around this. It's about the public, not you. But if you look at the average public information brochure, it's about you and not the public. And when I say you, I mean you need to look no further than the table out that door and you see FEMA stuff. You see Red Cross stuff. It's about FEMA. It's about the Red Cross. It's about this group. It's about that group. It's about the information provider. Oh, wrong. Brand the message, not the messenger. Brand the message, not the messenger. It's not about you. It's about the people you're trying to get ready. Convince groups, including your own, to stop providing unique messages. Work with other information providers so everyone tells the public the same thing. Standardized messages work best. Step 5, use multiple dissemination channels. Sound familiar? It's a little bit like warnings. Distribute information over as many channels as is possible because people do more when they get the same message delivered in different ways. It looks like this. There's the public. Signs and placards people encounter here and there. Bumper stickers on city and county vehicles. Websites. Social media. TV spots. Brochures. You direct mail to people's houses, expensive, or at least have at community events. What community events? Most of them. Doesn't need to be a preparedness fair. Go to the next art exhibit and have some stuff for people to take home. Stuff on radio, stuff in the newspaper, school coloring books, grocery bag messages, etc. Step 6, communicate over the long haul. It's more effective to communicate over time, not for a day or week. To coordinate information across partners to form an information stream. People do more after receiving the same message many times. And it's best to communicate if it's sustained, ongoing, and doesn't end. So how do you engage in public information education? You start it and you never stop. Sounds like work. Well, maybe the guy in charge of communication can handle it. Number 7, focus provided information on actions. The most effective thing to say to motivate people to prepare is what they should do to prepare. Here's an example. In California, we have this brochure. It's a what to do brochure. It's called Putting Down Roots in Earthquake Country. This brochure has been marketed to the public for 20 years. Millions have been distributed. Cities give it out. Counties give it out. The state gives it out. We've customized them now. We now have Putting Down Roots on the California coast. We have putting down roots, the inland empire. We have putting down roots just to make it a little more personalized for people. We've given it out electronically so local communities can add their own twist to it and say, here's the local county or city website where you could get more information. Step 8, explain consequence reduction. This is critical. You got to tell people how preparedness actions reduce losses. You have to tell people how preparedness actions reduce losses. Otherwise, it's not linked to them. People are more inclined to prepare if information explains how recommended actions cut losses if something happens. Now, how do you do that politely? Without getting into blood and guts, and you shouldn't get into blood and guts. But that's what has to be done for people for it to seem relevant to people. 9, give people cues. Get public preparedness out of the closet and into the streets. Target people who have already prepared to share what they've done with others. The biggest partners you have are the members of the public who have already prepared. Social media might be able to help with that. People are the most likely to prepare if they see what others have done and if people they know tell them about it. You got to make preparedness visible in communities. So if for some reason the city is ever doing something structural to make it that structure more resistant to some kind of natural disaster, for example, put up a big sign and toot your horn about it. 10, do consequence-based evaluations. Measure your starting place, get a late baseline of public preparedness, measure changes in public preparedness over time, and evaluate effectiveness and fine-tune your program if needed. Which information components work and don't work, and revise provided information based on those findings. And surveys can do that. Measure preparedness. So if you've measured in your populations, wherever they are, the level of preparedness in place, did a bunch of things that you hope motivate the public to prepare and come back in 5 years, and the needle's not changed, maybe you should change your approach. That's an evidence-based approach. And here are the steps summarized. In order to accomplish this, the different partners need an orchestra leader to tie them all together, to bring the NGOs, businesses, and different governments together, as many different sources and channels as you can, to have people declare their partnership in the system, put someone in charge of it. We've actually done that in California. We have one human being at the University of Southern California that's taken on this mission and has for a dozen years. And he invented something called the shakeout. And once a year, we have a shakeout, and we're trying to get everybody in the state to get under a heavy table or desk, drop cover, and hold on to the leg so you're protected from falling objects. Well, it caught on. And now a bunch of other states have shakeouts. Oh, wait, it caught on more. A bunch of other countries now have shakeouts. We've almost got the world drop covering and hold on October 13th or 17th, whatever the date is. And he got flown to Washington, D.C. and was given some medal by the president of the country for getting that together. And he's got a bunch of other things. And so they have websites, and they're trying to grow people they find out what they've done to prepare, everybody that enrolls for the shakeout. They have millions of people reporting what they've done to prepare for earthquakes, and making a list, and they only have to click a button and they could send it to their friends because they know information coming from friends about what they've done has a bigger impact than anything else. On and on and on and on. I'm afraid to measure how much progress we've made because this is a tough nut to crack. Standardized and orchestrated messages across partners is what's needed. Over time, in the long haul, repetitive messaging works. Actions to take, plus how actions cut losses and encourage action taking. Visible action taking cues, evaluate, and revise. 3 pathways. This is a summary of a summary. First, prepare public information to motivate preparedness with a particular content. Second, distribute that information in a particular way. And third, foster community change so neighbors and friends share actions they've taken with their friends and neighborhoods. This is the key to the kingdom. Not about whether you like it or not about whether your personal experience confirms it or not. This is what works with Americans.